Ripley Atkinson is the Senior Market Information Analyst at Meat and Livestock Australia. Ripley, how are you going today?
Yeah, good, Ricky, good. Thanks for having me.
Always a pleasure. And not that long ago, you've been talking about just what the export numbers? What's Meat and Livestock Australia seeing there?
Yeah, our forecast for exports or production this year is actually quite strong. So it's an improvement on last year, and carcass weights are underpinning that increase. So the forecasts based on, genetics, sound on-farm management and that medium-term confidence at the producer level are underpinning improved production. And as a result of that, our forecasts from January do expect an improvement in beef exports for 2023.
Oh, that's positive news, and I guess there's plenty of stock on hand as well as we look at what's been happening in the livestock markets. If you just looked purely on the Eastern Young Cattle Indicator, it's on a serious dive, but I'm sure there's more to the story than that.
Yeah, so the market has corrected. There's no questions that the cattle market and the young cattle market has corrected in 2023. When you look at this current price, it's sitting at about average, if a little bit above average for over the 5-year average. So prices, despite the decline, are still sitting relative to 5-year averages. When you try and compare it to 12 months ago, it's extremely difficult because the market was in such a strong space this time last year. It's not a fair comparison or representation of market conditions when it was at such record highs at this time in 2022.
So what are in the drivers when it comes to market conditions? Is there a heavy amount of supply or a light amount of supply behind what's going on with price?
We're certainly seeing an improvement in yardings, yes. So New South Wales year-to-date yardings are up by 12,500 head. Victorian yardings are up by 42% or 9,500 head. And then Queensland as well is about firm. South Australian yardings are up. So obviously all this increased cattle coming onto the market is naturally having that supply and demand effect and therefore impacting price.
And are we seeing something similar with sheep? I mean, certainly on the trade lamb indicator, the price is sort of wobbling fairly consistently long-term over the last 12 months around that 7.30, 7.50 cents. But is there more supply happening with sheep too?
Yeah, definitely so. Sheep yardings as well. Nationally, they're up 60%, or up by sort of 170,000 head. So they're in quite a strong position. New South Wales yardings are up by nearly 100% or 115,000 head. Victoria up by 60%. South Australia up by 70%. So that is having a contribution to performance of those indicators, and clearly, again, like cattle, supply and demand, naturally that increased supply is placing pressure on the market. But when you look at the longer-term averages for the trade lamb indicator, it still is performing relative to that longer time frame.
Well, even in the current market as well, regardless of the previous comparisons, you say there's a whole lot more supply, but the price is actually reasonably resilient, isn't it, despite all that supply compared to what we're seeing in cattle?
Very much so, Ricky. And when you look at export performance, we just had record mutton exports to China for the month of January, so they were the highest on record. And overall, sheep meat exports are also quite strong. So the demand there internationally is supporting the resilience in price that we're seeing on the domestic livestock market too.
And you mentioned mutton as an export positive. Within the sheep market, are there particular categories where we're seeing something sort of bucking the trend in terms of where prices are at the moment?
The heavy lamb indicator is showing strong signs of resilience, and that does have a lot to do with the number available. So there is a shorter supply of heavy lambs, and it is performing relative, to that sort of even year ago levels. It's only down by 3 cents compared to this time last year, and it has performed quite strongly as a category if you singled it out compared to some of the others.
Well, Ripley, appreciate those insights into a market that it feels like it's kind of gone back to business as usual after a few sort of heady years. Is it fair to say that?
That would be a fair comment, definitely.
All right, cheers, Ripley. Thanks for joining us from Meat and Livestock Australia. Have a good day.
Thanks for having me, Ricky.